I built this viral ASMR video that's going crazy on TikTok. Now this content is going super viral on TikTok. I found this profile called ASMR AI. They don't even have that many videos on here. If I scroll down to the bottom, there's maybe like 30 videos, something like that, but I've sorted by popular and you can see that the main video has almost 16 million views. So this stuff is really high in demand and it's not that hard to go viral. This workflow has 4 parts. So the first part is to generate ideas and to use those ideas to generate prompts. The second part is to basically separate the scenes, and you'll see why when I show you how to build it, and to then create the images. The third part is to then create the sounds. And the last part of the automation is to kind of just stitch it all together, put it all together, and then save it onto Google Sheets. So the first part of the automation is always the trigger, and I've actually used a scheduled trigger for this. You can use anything you want, and that's the first part. The second node is going to be an AI agent node. So I've used this many times on previous videos. If you're not familiar with that, just go over to my previous faceless or POV videos. There's plenty of content there to get you started. I'm going to use this to generate ideas. I don't want to think about any ideas. I just want the AI to do it for me. So what I've done is I've given it a prompt here, which is just give me ideas for a visual where a sharp blade slices through a hard material. Now, obviously I'm going for the ASMR kind of angle here. You can put any angle, any type of niche or any type of video that you want. And then I'm actually using a think tool to review the output because I want to get the best possible output from this AI agent before I send it over to create the videos. I want to make sure that I'm using all the tools that are available to me, and the think tool is giving me really good results. Once you have that, you want to make sure that require specific output format has been toggled on, and you'll see why in a second. Because when you create an AI agent, you're always going to need a system message. So if I open up this window and show you the expression, it's basically you are an AI agent designed to generate one immersive, realistic idea featuring a piece of exotic fruit. That's the kind of angle that I've gone for. But you can see that on the TikTok video, they had pancakes, they had other fruits, other objects, teapots, that kind of stuff. I've seen all sorts of things on TikTok. And so I've given it some parameters here, some guidelines, and I've also given it some examples because language models work really well when you put some examples in there. And then for the format, I want 4 variables. The first one is idea, the second one is scene, sound, and captions. And this is because I want to create some content that I could then in the future, if I wanted to upload it onto TikTok or YouTube Shorts, I can, or even Instagram Reels. And then it's just a JSON array. And so because I've got an output format, I need to then add 2 things. The first is the language model. So I'm using 4.0 mini for this because it's very affordable. You can burn through a lot of tokens. It's not going to cost you that much. And really a structured output parser. So if you look inside the structured output parser, I've just basically outputted the variables that I'm asking the AI agent to create for me. And everything inside of these quotation marks, this will be replaced by the AI. So when you run that, you'll see an output of something like this, right? So if I'm going to table, you'll see all the ideas that it's generating. For this one, it was like an obsidian shaped like a teacup. And you'll see the sound, the scene, captions, etc. The next node I've added is a Google Sheets node because I want to track everything. So this is just a pen sheet. And for this, I've just created a very basic kind of like a database, and what it does is it will capture the idea, the captions, the scene, the sound, the status. This has been done because I've already done it. I've already run the automation, which is the video that I showed you at the start of this, and this is the final output. This is what File AI has generated for me. So if I go inside of here, you'll see that I'm just selecting the document and the sheet, and I'm mapping each column manually. For the ID, I'm using a formula, which is just to generate a unique number for each row. And then for the captions, you just literally just drag everything over here. Okay, so for sound, it's this one, and for idea, it's this one at the top here. That's it. And then you know it's worked because you've got an output, but more importantly, it's saved on the Google Sheet. Okay, and the last one you want is status to process. So I'm doing 2 runs. The first one is to get the ideas, which is to process. Second one, once it's complete, is then change the status to done. So if I go back to the sheet, you'll see I've only got 2 statuses here. Once you have that, make sure you test it and save it. And then the next thing you want to do is basically you want to add another AI agent, this time to generate the prompts. So for this, the first prompt is generate 3 unique video concepts inspired by the previous idea. Use the think tool to refine and validate your responses. And then, as before, we are going to need to toggle on the specific output format. And then for the inputs, I'm taking the 3 inputs from the previous node. So for the scene, it's scene, and for the sound, it's going to be the sound. And you just literally drag and drop it here. And then for the format, I want idea, scene, sound scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4. So I'm using 4 scenes. So the video I showed you had 4 scenes of about 10 seconds. So it's about a 40-second video. You can put as many scenes as you want in here, and you can make it as long as you want. And I'll show you exactly how you set it up later down the flow. But this is a JSON output, and that's why we then are going to need obviously a language model, which is using the same for a mini. We need another structured output parser, and it's the same array. Okay, so I'm basically asking it to create these variables that I can then use later downstream in the automation. Once all the content has been created, we can now begin and create the other assets. But before we can do that, we need to separate the scenes, which is why I've created this code node here. So if I go inside of here, all this code is doing is basically getting the inputs of the output, which is an object and an array. And all these individual variables, I need to separate them out because I need to create prompts for them. And so once you run the output, you'll see this, which is exactly what we need. And now we can create the image. So for this, I'm using an HTTP request node. If I click inside of here, I'll show you what it does. So the method is post because we're sending data to this. And then for the body, it's this here, which is JSON, and we're going to use JSON. And all I'm telling it to do is basically send the idea, the scene, and the scene text, which is this stuff here. So basically how I want the image to look. The aspect ratio is 9:16, which is portrait. Duration is 10 seconds, so I've got 4 of these, so I'll have a 40-second video at the end of it. So if you click inside of here, you'll see that go over to the API documentation, and this is everything that you need when you want to create a video. So this is the base URL. The endpoint is this here at the end. You can see that the content type is application JSON for the header. This is the header for the authorization, which is your wave speed, API key, and then it's got all the other information here in here as well. And if you want your API keys, just click on API here, and then just create an API key. So I just called mine CDAN's viral shorts generator. Grab the API key, and then you're going to create a new credential. And then for the name, you want to call it authorization. So exactly how you see it here, the documentation. So if I go back to this here, you will see that it has the API, and it's this here. So authorization, you just copy that, paste that here, and then the rest of it is just bearer and a space and then your API key. That's it. And then just save it, call it something useful. I'm not gonna do that because I've already got it saved, and that's it. But when you test it, you'll see a status of 200, which is great. That means it's worked. You'll see some output here, but it might not be success. It might be in progress or something like that along those lines. And that's fine because that just means that we need a wait node. So this is just a wait node. I'll put it in 5 seconds. You probably need like a minute or so, maybe 30 seconds, just to make sure that the Gen AI has finished what it's doing. It's processing, and then it should be completed. To see where that is, if you head over back to wave speed, go to your dashboard, and you're gonna see here when it started and roughly when it finished. So it's about 30 seconds, something like that, between 20-30 seconds per picture. So it's not too bad. And then once you test that, you'll see an output and it's all completed. And then now that the image has been created, we could then get the image. So this is another HTTP request node. This time it's get because we're going to pull it off from the servers over at WaveSpeed. Make sure you select the same credential type for the generic authentication. But this time the URL is going to be this URL here. So where it says the URL, they're already telling us that it's going to be here once it's finished. So you just drag and drop this over here, and that's it. You don't need anything else. You don't need body, toggle it on. And then once you run that, you'll see an output, and this is it. This is the image here, or the video that you can see here. And so that's the second part of the automation done. So let's move on to the third part. Now that we have the images created, we can move on to the sound. So for this, you're going to need a HTTP request node. So just open this one up. And you can see that I'm using file for this, which is using a tool called Audio, which is really cool. It's really affordable. And honestly, it doesn't even cost pennies. It's like 0.1 or something. Then I've set up a generic credential type. So this is for file AI. So I'd have to keep typing in the API key. For the send body, I've toggled on JSON, and we're going to use JSON. And this is the payload that we're sending back to file. So for the ASMR soothing sound effects, I created a sound variable in the generate prompts AI agent, which is this one here. And for the video URL, that just comes from the previous node here, which is outputs, and it's just the .mp4 file. And so make sure you test that and save it. When you run it, you'll have an output like this. It was in queue when I ran it with the status, but obviously it's now completed. And so because of that, we're going to need another wait for sounds node. So for this one, I've just set it to 5 seconds. You probably need about 30 seconds, to be honest with you, which is enough. And then once it's been processed, it's created, then we can get the sound. So if you open up another HTTP request node here, this time it's a get method because I'm pulling it off their servers. You want to select the same file AI generic credential type, but for the URL, they already tell us what it is. It's this response URL here. So just drag and drop this here. When you execute it, you'll see a bunch of URLs here. So this is the final outputted your audio. Okay, so we've got the video, we've got the audio, now let's put it together. And so we have all that there. Now that we have everything, we can piece it all together and render the final video. But before we can do that, there's a code node here, which will list all the videos. If I click inside of here, it's just basic code to take all these video URLs and then put them into a table, which is what you see on the right hand side here. Because this is going to be easier for me to manipulate inside of File AI when I send that request off to get it rendered, okay, which is this next node here. So this is another HTTP request node. If I click inside of here, you'll see that this time I'm now using the FFmpeg, if I can say it, and that's the compose endpoint. So basically FFmpeg, I've actually used it in previous videos, and what it does is an open source video editor, right? And it's actually free, so it's not going to cost you anything in terms of using the application, but because it's hosted on Files servers, there's like a nominal cost, something like 0.1 cent or something. And that's basically just a server cost, electricity cost, running costs, right? And so it's like I said, it's a post. We're going to use the same generic credentials, send bodies toggled. This time it's raw content type. The content type is application JSON. And then for the payload, it's just this JSON here. As you can see here, the ID is 1. The type we're going to use now is video. For the keyframes, you're just going to drag these video URLs. And that's why I need it in their list, because I need each of these as one individual variable. So it's just basically a list of here. So I have 4. If you've got 10, you will just drag 10 over. And for the timestamp, it's from 0 to 10. The duration is 10 seconds. The next video will start from 10 to, and it's another duration of 10 seconds. And then this one will start from 20 seconds and it's duration for 10 seconds, and so on and so forth, right? So this is just the template that you need. And this is what File requires. So once you run that, you'll see that it's in queue, which means it's processing. So as you can imagine, we're going to need another wait node. So this time we're going to wait for render. And I've left it at 5 seconds. You're probably going to need like a minute or so just to get that going. Once it's done, we can then get the video. So now it's going to be a get method in the HTTP request node. For the URL, it's just this one here. So the response URL, just drag that over here and select the credentials. You don't need any body here because we're just dragging the video over. And then once you run it, you'll see the video URL. You even got a thumbnail if you want that. And once we have the video URL, the last node is then the update sheet node in Google Sheets. So it's the same document, same sheet. We're going to map each column manually, but we're going to use the ideas row for this. So match it for the ideas row. So if you head back to the first one, it's this one here. And then the only thing we need to update is the final output. So that's the video URL from the get video node. And we're going to change the status to done. And so when you head back over the sheet, you will see that it's now done. And then it's got the final output here. And if you want this automation, head over to the school community. The link is in the description below. Here you'll find a classroom. Click on the AI automations and blueprints. And you're going to see a bunch of automations inside of here for both N8N and Make.com. So the link is in the description. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you found this video useful, please give me a thumbs up and I'll see you next time.